Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the TWSN live show. And guys, it may look a little bit different this time. We are without one of our co-hosts, Jake Sturkis, but for his replacement, we got our boy Pranav Sriraman. Pranav, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Ready to talk some NBA. It's been a wild couple of weeks. I'm excited.
Exactly, and we got our usual suspects. We got Will Lachlan. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. We're going to get into some great stuff in the NBA and, of course, the NFL and even some UFC. So ready to go as always.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And Max, as always, you know I love to see your fire, man. I want to see you get passionate today. I want to see you debate. Max, how you doing?
Great. I'm excited to debate. I'm excited to be right. And I'm excited to talk some sports.
You gotta love the confidence. But before we get into anything, make sure you guys subscribe to our YouTube channel. Right, we're here every single Tuesday night. We got unique live shows. We got breakdowns. We got everything on our YouTube channel. Follow us on Instagram at TWSN. Follow us on Twitter. We are everywhere. We have a mobile app, a website. We got everything at the Right Way Sports Network. But guys, typically we jump into the NFL, but let's start it out in the NBA. We know we have our main debate topic: who's the greatest NBA point guard of all time. But let's start it out with some recent news. Jamal Murray, I believe, tore his ACL. What does that do to the Nuggets' hopes of potentially winning the NBA Finals this year? Will, we'll start with you.
It basically takes them down from contenders to, I'm not going to say pretenders because it's not really fair to label them as that, considering, their second best player is out with an injury. But they're just not. They don't really have a chance, in my opinion, to really get to back to the Western Conference Finals, which is where they were last year. Possibly second round, but I think that's like at the best case scenario, and that really depends on the matchup. One of the Nuggets, Suns, Jazz, Clippers, and Lakers have to lose, and I think more than likely the team that plays the Lakers. But out of that bunch, you'd probably say the Nuggets right now, and it's because of the Jamal Murray injury. Before, I would say, maybe the Jazz, maybe the Suns, because the Nuggets were absolutely on a roll. The Aaron Gordon trade has turned out to be an A+ from the Nuggets, and just an absolute home run of a deal. He's been a perfect fit. But without Jamal Murray, it's just going to be tough. You look at their last two playoff appearances. 2 years ago, they lost in 7 to the Blazers in the second round. And then last year, they were able to get over that hump, winning Game 7 with Jamal Murray putting up 42 points in that Game 7 against the Clippers, and they were able to get to the Western Conference Finals. They lost, albeit, but the Lakers were just a better team. So there's no shame in that. They overachieved. And I think the biggest difference was Jamal Murray stepping up. Jokic was obviously their best player, and he's been their best player. Nobody's going to deny that. But Jamal Murray stepping up from a pretty good player to basically a star. Putting up some historic scoring performances in some of those games. That was the main difference, in my opinion, between them, being in that second round versus the Western Conference Finals and truly threatening for the title. And now, they're losing that. And sure, Michael Porter Jr. has stepped up big time, and Jokic is still going to be great. Nobody's going to say any different. But I don't know, Michael Porter Jr., his main thing has been the efficiency and the movement off ball and how he's been able to perform as a shooter playing off both Jokic and Jamal Murray. And I don't know if he's necessarily going to be able to fill into a number 2 role for the Nuggets to get that same kind of production that Murray was giving to you on a consistent basis. He has the talent, but we'll see. So I have some level of confidence, but I don't know. The Nuggets, is just that offensive firepower that they had with those 3 guys in particular with Aaron Gordon was just too much. You lose Jamal Murray. He's your second best. He's your best ball handler. He's your second best scorer, playmaker, all that. It's going to be tough. I just see the Nuggets losing in the first round. Maybe it depends on the matchup. Jokic can still carry them, but it's just going to be tough because Murray was the difference maker for them last year.
Yeah, and Pranav, I'm going to come at you with a little bit of a different question. You're a lead NBA analyst. So if Monty Morris, right, if he can put up at least starter level production, do they have a chance to make the Western Conference Finals, or is it too far gone for them?
To make the Western Conference Finals, I'm not going to say it's impossible because they have the MVP in Nikola Jokic, and we cannot doubt what that man can do on the offensive side of the basketball. Jamal Murray is a big loss. He's the best on-ball creator. What he does off the ball, he's so efficient as a shooter. But the Nuggets have so much depth. They added Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter Jr.'s emergence. I mean, I don't see them getting to the finals, but a Western Conference Finals run is definitely not out of the realm of possibility based on what this team has shown us. Even without Jamal Murray, this was his first game back against Golden State before he tore his ACL. Their offense was on fire. Michael Porter Jr. was shooting around 50% from three. They had the best offense in the NBA during that stretch. And if they can maintain that same consistency, I know they blew a big lead to Boston, but if they can maintain that same consistency they had when Jamal was out, proving that they aren't as Jamal reliant as people may presume, then I think they can make some real noise come playoff time.
Max?
I respectfully disagree. I think it's really matchup based, like you were saying, right? So if they play, say, a Portland in the first round, I think that's definitely better than playing like the Lakers, right? The Lakers are falling off. We don't know how far they're going to fall before Anthony Davis and LeBron come back. So obviously, I don't like that matchup. I don't like them matching up with the Clippers. I don't like them matching up with the Suns, and I don't like them matching up with the Jazz. So if any of those potential scenarios happen down the road, I just don't see it possible if this Nuggets team without. Obviously I would say Jokic is their best player, but Jamal Murray is certainly their second best overall player. And that's a huge loss for them. I mean, and I'm talking for fans of the league as a whole. It's sad to see a young superstar go out like that, especially on a team that was destined to contend, at least in the West. So I disagree. I don't think it's going to happen in the West, or at least the Western Conference Finals run. I do think they could possibly make the second round if they get a decent matchup, but the West is so competitive, as it always is every year, and I just don't see this Denver Nuggets team without Jamal Murray making a real run in the playoffs.
Yeah, guys, we're all anticipating something right now. We're anticipating the big debate, right? Who is the greatest point guard in NBA history? And obviously, there is no right answer. It's the same thing with the GOAT debate: Michael Jordan, LeBron James. But let's talk about it, right? Magic Johnson from the 80s, Steph Curry right now. Who is the greatest point guard in NBA history? And we are going to let Pranav start us off.
The greatest point guard in the history of the NBA is none other than Wardell Stephen Curry II. And here's why. Steph Curry is a better scorer than Magic Johnson. Agreed. He scores on higher volume. He's far more efficient from every spot on the floor. Here's the twist, and some of you may disagree with me, but just hear me out. Steph Curry is also a better playmaker than Magic Johnson. Yes, I said it. Magic Johnson is a better on-ball playmaker than Steph Curry. He's a better passer, no doubt about it. However, what Steph Curry does both on and off the ball gives him the edge in that department. Steph Curry's constant motion in that offense, just constantly moving without the basketball. As soon as he steps past half court, teams have to zero in on him. Defenses have to key in on him, which allows his teammates to get open looks all around the court. There's a reason why this season the Warriors starters massively improved in efficiency without him. Draymond Green goes from shooting 35% true shooting to almost above 50 with Steph Curry. James Wiseman sees a massive leap, about 7% higher with Steph Curry. Same thing with Oubre. Same thing with Wiggins. That's not just fueled by what he does on the ball as a passer. It's fueled by how much defensive attention he draws, just constantly running around, causing havoc. And hear this. This season, the Golden State Warriors have the 13th best offense in the NBA when Steph Curry is on the floor. However, when he exits the floor, they have the worst defense in NBA history statistically. And defensively, one may presume that Magic Johnson has the edge because of his height. However, Magic Johnson was not a great defender. Teams often tried to draw him out onto the perimeter, which exposed matchups which they could quickly blow past him on. And then off ball, he did not provide much rim protection value either. And combined with that, Steph Curry has significantly improved as a defender. He's a great off-ball defender, constantly reading the passing lanes and getting deflections, as he's led the league in steals and deflections multiple years in a row. And then very recently, he's improved on the ball as well, putting pressure on tougher defenders such as Blake Griffin, who's much larger than him. He puts pressure on those defenders on the perimeter, forcing them to take tougher shots than they initially would. Steph Curry has the offensive advantage. He has the defensive advantage, and that is why he is the best point guard in NBA history.
Wow. Wow, Max, I know that you
Gospel. Praise the
don't.
gospel, Pranav.
I know that you don't agree with Pranav, so I'll let you give him a rebuttal.
So, I mean, look, it depends on how you define what a point guard is. There's no disputing that Stephen Curry is the best shooter of all time. There's no disputing that he's a better overall, scorer than Magic Johnson. There's no dispute there. But the way that I analyze the point guard, it's obviously scoring is a big part of it, but it has to also do with leadership. It has to do with distributing the basketball. It has to do with going on and winning games, especially when it doesn't look like it's going to happen. So let's look at Magic Johnson statistically. He's averaged throughout his career, he's averaged over 11 assists per game. Curry has only averaged 6.5. Magic Johnson, he has a 52% overall field goal percentage in his career. And don't get me wrong, Stephen Curry at 47.5 is pretty good, but that's pretty efficient if you ask me, especially for a point guard. And look, yes, there's plenty of players you could argue may be the better one-on-one player. Maybe they jump higher, maybe they can shoot the ball better. But I just don't see many better distributors, especially on the fast break, than Magic Johnson. And let's look at his career in general and what he did with the Lakers, right? He's a 5-time NBA champion. He won the NBA MVP 3 times, and he's a 3-time NBA Finals MVP. A lot of people have made the case that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar wouldn't have played as long as he did without the presence of Magic Johnson. And a lot of that is attributed to not only his leadership and his ability to distribute the basketball and allow other players on his team to succeed, but it's also his ability to play in different positions that best suits the team because of his size. He's a 6'9" point guard. There isn't too many 6'9" point guards today. And, we all look back to that classic NBA Finals game where, Kareem was out and he played center. I mean, that's impressive all in itself. So it just shows his willingness to win, put his team in a position to succeed. And, I just think even though Curry is a transcendent talent for, in today's era, in today's, he completely changed the way the game is played. I think without Magic Johnson, I don't think a lot of the point guards today would have a lot of the point guards today idolize Magic Johnson and point to his style of play in their ability to play today. And I just think that Magic Johnson, because of his icon status, because of his ability to go out and the impact he made on the court, both collegiately and professionally, he's a once in a generational talent, and he transcended the game. Yes, Curry transcended the game today, but before Curry, Magic Johnson changed what it meant to be a point guard in the NBA. So you have to take that into account. And that's why I think Magic Johnson is the best point guard of all time.
So before Will steps in, I want to debunk a couple of things. So number one, you said field goal percentage. However, the thing I don't like about field goal percentage is, number one, it doesn't account for threes being more valuable than 2-pointers. And number two, it doesn't account for free throws. Like, free throws is the way of scoring as well. In terms of true shooting percentage, Curry absolutely blows Magic out of the water. I mean, in terms of efficiency only climbs as players evolve. However, in an era where efficiency is only climbing, Curry, relative to this era, is scoring at a more efficient rate than Magic was at this era. Curry's best season scoring the ball was averaging 31.9 points per 75 possessions on 12.8% true shooting, while Magic's best season comes at around 8.5% above the league average, which is amazing in its own right, but he didn't score at nearly the same volume. And another thing is raw assist numbers doesn't do justice for Stephen Curry's playmaking. When you take into account what he does off the ball and what he does but what he does as a passer as well, while Magic doesn't really possess that off-ball ability Steph does, you could see that there's a stat called box creation, essentially. And Steph Curry, in his best seasons as a box creation, when you compare these two players, has 15.2 shots created for his teammates again, 14.4, 14.1, while Magic's best season is at 13.1. Steph consistently creates more shots for his teammates, and although Magic is the better passer, what I define playmaking as creating a shot for your teammate, and Steph Curry does that in the best possible way, both with the ball in his hands and both without the ball in his hands. I'm going to toss it to Will right now.
Yeah, so I mean, I agree with most of the points, but I'm on Pranav's side here. I have Curry as the greatest point guard of all time. And longevity-wise, legacy-wise, yes, you look at you compare accolades, Magic has more accolades. Now, he's obviously played his entire career, and Steph Curry is 33, so he still has plenty more years to catch up. But, you know, we are debating right now. So, you know, accolades, he has more rings, more finals MVPs, all that stuff. But just the way I view this is in two factors here. When it comes to their on-court impact and the influence of the game. And to me, Steph Curry, I'm not going to say blows Magic out of the water, but he's pretty clear advantage in both of those areas. You know, Magic does have the longevity, but when we look at their peak for peak, I mean, Pranav kind of hit it. You know, Curry is just clearly a better scorer. I mean, the volume just like what Magic averaged around like 20 points a night. He was a pretty efficient scorer relative, you know, to the time. He wasn't. They obviously weren't really shooting a bunch of threes. But Curry's Curry has incredible volume on incredibly high efficiencies, like all-time efficiency in both those areas. The playmaking is tough. Magic's has definitely an advantage when it comes to just raw passing skills. And so I don't think that should be denied at all. But Steph Curry, right, the off ball movement that he, you know, affects everything that the Warriors system has been able to do. I mean, we talk about the Warriors system of their off ball movement. That's basically like Steph Curry is the foundational cornerstone of that offensive system that the Warriors have been able to build their dynasty on. And Magic was also able to, you know, with his passing skills, be able to build a dynasty for himself. But I prefer Curry just because I think the off-ball movement honestly gives him – I think it makes his game a little bit more portable. And what I mean by that is you put Curry next to just other great talent. You know, when it comes really down to the debate of floor raising versus ceiling raising. You know, LeBron is like the all-time great floor raiser when it comes to he's carrying bad teammates to great heights. Like he can do that. Steph Curry is able to, we're seeing what he's doing right now, raising the floor of the Warriors. Just look at their offense when he's off the court versus on the court. But when it comes to when Steph Curry is the games, he's just more portable because he's been surrounded around great players and he's able to coexist better with them. Magic, in all honesty, his game really is not suited. Yeah, it was obviously suited to play around a great big man in Kareem, but you put him in some other situations with, you know, just really on-ball dominant wings or other guards that need the ball, he's not going to be able to coexist as well as a guy like Steph Curry would. Because Steph Curry can be your primary on-ball creator, but he can also play that off-ball role so he can give it up to another guy who wants to create offense at like the point guard position. Like Steph Curry could honestly play the two guard sure he doesn't have the size, but because he can play off-ball so much, he could play the shooting guard position if he needed to. But he obviously hasn't needed to because Klay Thompson is there. So at the end of the day, I think Curry's peak has just been greater when it comes to their on-court impact. And then the biggest separator for me is the influence on the sport. And you mentioned it, Max, about Magic's influence. And Magic does have great influence. He's really the pioneer of the point guard position, if you talk about historically. However, Steph Curry, we've yet to fully see Steph Curry's influence on the sport of basketball just because, I mean, he's still playing. So in 20 years, we'll be able to fully realize it. But Curry's just far more influential on the sport. I mean, you look at the reason why is the NBA why are we shooting more threes in the modern era? Why is the game more positionless than it has been in the past 10 years versus the last 5 years? You know, why are non-shooting big men basically irrelevant for the most part? It's because of Steph Curry. Like all this three-point shooting is built up. If you have to point to one reason, one player that caused this three-point shooting and scoring boom in the NBA, that player is Steph Curry. And to me, that just absolutely that's the difference maker. Steph Curry is one of the most influential, if not the most influential basketball player who's ever played the game, up there with Michael Jordan, LeBron, and you can put some other guys in there as well. But to me, that the influence on the sport just does it for me. And the reason that what we're seeing in the NBA as a whole with all the scoring and the shooting, it's because of that one guy, Steph Curry, and everything else has been to combat Steph Curry and the Warriors dynasty, like the Rockets and all their three-point shooting. That was to beat the Golden State Warriors. And at the heart of the Golden State Warriors dynasty is Steph Curry and his greatness. So I think Steph Curry just has the advantage when it comes to on-court impact and influence, and that's just the way I'm looking at it right now.
Will, okay, Pranav was making great points, right? I mean, like, I'm not going to say that you blew it for him, but you kind of did. The fact that you brought up influence on the sport, right? You are saying there's a wide margin. Steph's influence on the sport is so much greater than Magic's. That's completely false. Obviously, you weren't in the sport in the 80s.
Absolutely.
None of us were. Basketball in the 70s was kind of irrelevant, right? Once Bill Russell retired, once Wilt Chamberlain retired, TV ratings were down. Everything was down until the Bird versus Magic rivalry, until the East Coast versus the West Coast, until the Celtics versus the Lakers. That's what revolutionized basketball. I'm not saying Steph Curry did, because he did. Obviously, we're seeing this game become positionless. Obviously, we're seeing young kids just start chucking up threes. But basketball started booming once Magic Johnson was in the sport. Basketball started booming once that rivalry was formed. And that's where I just completely disagree with you.
Okay, I mean, look, Daniel, I see your point in that, yeah, and I give you that. Magic was a pioneer of the game, and the reason why the game has become more popular is Magic is a huge part of that. No denying that, but the influence that I'm talking about is how the game is.
Magic built the foundation for the NBA as we see it today.
Absolutely, but how the game
that's the differentiator.
Is
no, but that's the differentiator. The NBA wouldn't be the NBA today if it wasn't for Magic Johnson.
Exactly.
I wouldn't say that because of Magic Johnson.
Let me interrupt for real quick. I wouldn't say that the NBA today is the NBA today because of Steph Curry. You see these three-point shooters. You see entire teams like the Houston Rockets from a couple of years ago. You see teams, even like the bottom-tier teams, like the Minnesota Timberwolves, base their entire offense heliocentrically around shooting. That's all built around what Steph Curry did for the game of basketball, attempting more threes, maximizing on possessions, getting the most points you can per possession. If you like, and you guys mentioned the Bird Magic rivalry rejuvenated basketball in the 80s, and I cannot dispute that. However, those are two people. Steph Curry, according to Statista, in Steph Curry's his MVP season, after his MVP season, ratings and revenue in millions of dollars rise by almost 50 million. Year before, it was only by 10 million. That shows the impact Steph Curry has on both TV sales. You see the sneaker sales as well with Under Armour, although Under Armour is not as popular of a brand as Converse was back then. You see that it took two men to reach Steph Curry's impact on the game that he has today. While Steph Curry,
but my argument and what you're saying is fair, Pranav. But what I'm saying is, the game was already at an elevated status before Curry was in the league because of the impact that Magic Johnson and Larry Bird did. Magic Johnson, Larry Bird made basketball relevant. Michael Jordan comes into the fold, and now basketball is one of the top sports in this country. Then when Michael Jordan retires, in comes LeBron James, Stephen Curry. They're building on that, right? They're the next generation of building the sport. But what I'm saying is, we wouldn't be at this elevated point, even say take away Curry's impact. We wouldn't even have been at the point where the sport was before Curry was in the league if it wasn't for the impact of Magic Johnson in the 80s with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the impact that he had on his teammates, the consistent winning, the dynasty that he had with the Los Angeles Lakers back then. Listen, I said this when I made my first point. By no means am I going to dispute that Magic is a better overall scorer than Stephen Curry, because I don't think there's a debate there, right? But I just think when you talk about overall impact, you have to give credit where credit's due. Yes, Curry's impact the game, but the game wouldn't be where it's at for Curry to impact it if it wasn't for Magic Johnson. And Magic Johnson revolutionized the point guard position.
Can we really give Magic that advantage? I mean, I really don't think we can give that. Look, we're talking about two different kinds of influence.
Can we say the same thing about Jerry West, Bill Russell, Will Chamberlain, George Mikan? I mean, are we going to really argue that George Mikan is more influential than Steph Curry? Because we can argue that George Mikan paved the way for guys like Bill Russell, who paved the way for guys like Kareem, who eventually teamed up with Magic in his rookie year, and that set the course for everything. That doesn't mean that they had more cultural impact on the sport of basketball than the guys following after them.
We're talking about
but it's a fact that all those guys you just listed, as much as they've had an impact on the game, did not have nearly as much of an impact as, say, Bird and Magic did on making the sport a popular sport in this country, and that's a fact.
And I'm telling you that the same way that happened, that's what Steph Curry did. Magic and Bird did make it popular, but Steph Curry took it to new heights with his shooting ability. You see the entire NBA is all around shooting right now. That is due to one man.
Yeah, and to me,
wait, hold on one second. I completely agree with you. And it's like, I'm not going to sit up here and say that Steph Curry was the sole reason for that, because he was a main reason, but you still had guys like James Harden. You still had guys like Kevin Durant, who were all-world talents, all-world scorers that were already pushing it, but Steph Curry pushed it over the top. My whole argument for this is because Will said it's a way that his influence, Curry's influence, is much larger than what Magic's was, and I can completely disagree with that.
Here's the
and,
line
and for the cherry on top, what does influence have to do with what they do on the basketball court?
Yeah, that's what I wasn't even going to bring it up. I was just disputing what Will said. Influence has nothing to do with the actual game, the way the game is played. Steph Curry, how he impacted the way the game was played is by his shooting ability, is by him being – he was sexy in his own right? Like, I mean, it's the step back threes. It's the pulling up from half court. Magic Johnson, people didn't have handles like Magic Johnson until he came in. People couldn't pass like Magic Johnson until he came in. People didn't work the fast break. He was the engine of their offense. Two completely different offenses. Steph is in his own right, and so is Magic. And that's where they both impacted their team in their own way. And offensively, Steph Curry is the better scorer, but still, Magic Johnson ran that Lakers offense, and he was the reason why they went to their heights.
Look, I'd like to.
You could say the same about Steph.
Can I defend my influence point? Because y'all keep attacking my influence point.
Go ahead.
All right. So look, where I'm coming from is when it comes to who changed what we see on the floor. You said influence on how the game is played doesn't matter. I couldn't disagree more. I think influence when it comes to how the sport's being played right now, and Steph Curry's far more impact, even though, we're in a different era, but still Steph Curry's far more impact in that respect is more important than who made the game more popular. I mean, that's a different debate, I guess. But to me, influence when it comes to how the impact that they showed on the court and their skill set and their talent, I think influence on how the game is played in Steph Curry's respect is absolutely relevant, at least to me in my GOAT debate. May not be for other people, but influence on the sport is huge in my criteria. And the way I see it is Curry is one of the top 4 most influential basketball players of all time. I mean, I could go over again, like he's made non-shoot, like you can't be can you really be a starting level basketball? I mean, we see Rudy Gobert as a rim director, he can't shoot. So yeah, you can be a good player in the NBA still not being able to shoot. There's not that many guys in the NBA that can really be very effective players if they don't have a 3-point shot. And the sole reason, not the sole reason, but when you go through the weeds and you really look through why the NBA is played the way it is today, you're going to find Steph Curry at the very center of it all. And everything has just been a cause and effect from there.
Let me interject for Will real quick. So most of the younger NBA players surveyed that they preferred Kobe Bryant over LeBron James as their favorite player growing up. However, one wouldn't necessarily argue. There isn't like a valid argument for Kobe being better than LeBron. We're all on the same page there, right? So one can have – I think Curry has more cultural impact than Magic for one, but one can have more cultural impact, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they were the better basketball player. That's my initial.
And also, when it comes to cultural impact, we haven't seen the true ramifications of Steph Curry's impact. I mean, we've seen it with Magic because he's been out of the league for decades, but Steph Curry is still playing. So I think in 20 years, we're going to see just how great Steph Curry's influence truly has been. Because we're seeing young players. I mean, you look at high school mixtapes online, it's as more threes than dunks now. Like 10, 15 years ago, it was mainly just dunks. I know that's a pretty small thing, but it's like you're seeing a bunch of threes in high school and college. I mean, they moved the 3-point line back in college. It's just everything. I truly think that in a few decades from now, we're going to see the true ramifications of what Steph Curry started when it comes to, and the league's not going back. Like the scoring boom, it's only going to get.
But we can't be using what ifs in an argument that pertains to today. And we're talking about the best point guard. We're talking about the best point guard in the history of the league. And look, I listen. I'm not disputing the influence that both these guys had, and I think that it's fair to say that it's hard to ignore that in this debate. But at the same time, I think it would be fair if we did, because we're just talking about on the court specifically. Yeah, sure. But also, look, like I said for the millionth time, Curry's a better scorer. He's definitely not a better distributor. Did he make an impact on the court for his team? Sure. But Magic Johnson, the impact he made, left a bigger and more prosperous legacy. And again, Curry can change that in a matter of years, sure. But the impact he made secured a legacy that Curry has yet to reach, and that many players have not reached. So that's why, for me, Magic Johnson is the best player.
Peak or longevity more? Peak or longevity?
You have to do both. Obviously,
Sure, like
Steph Curry has the better peak statistically wise. He has the better peak, the better score.
And
When you're shooting a million threes, of course you could have better statistics. The point is, Magic Johnson played in an entirely different area where the 3-point game, like you said, wasn't incorporated at the same time. Now, Magic Johnson, to be honest, wasn't a great shooter, right? So even if there were a lot more 3-point shooters, I don't think he would have, necessarily been efficient in it. But I do think that you're dismissing his scoring ability, and you're also dismissing just the overall impact he had on his team in the league.
Max, you said it best. Magic Johnson didn't have the opportunity to capitalize on increased 3-point shooting because it wasn't implemented at the time. Who implemented it? Who was the one?
Curry. That was my point.
No, but that's not
the influence started by Steph Curry. So it's like if Steph Curry
it was not started by Steph.
It was not started by him.
But it was
I'm talking about Pranav. You're getting it confused. When I mean by influence of 3-pointers, even before Stephen Curry was in the league, right? You go into the 90s even. The 3-point shooting became a much larger factor per generation in the future. Right. So it's not Stephen Curry didn't just start shooting threes and then everyone started shooting threes. No, that's not true. There's plenty of 3-point shooters, Reggie Miller, Ray Allen, to name a few, that were elite 3-point shooters before Stephen Curry was even in the league. So to just sit there and assume that Stephen Curry is the reason why everyone is shooting threes, listen, sure, he's impacted the game, but there's plenty of elite 3-point shooters before that. Magic Johnson just happened to play in an era where, compared to even the 90s or the 2000s, that was a relative non-factor.
And when we compare like two different players from two different eras, you have to factor in that they are two different eras. And when I did that earlier, when I was comparing their efficiency, I did factor in that the league average always goes up, right? Just like standardized test scores for school, they constantly rise over time. The same thing happens with efficiency. As the game evolves, efficiency evolves, so you have to measure it by what the league average is. Steph Curry, even in this high-pace, inflated efficiency era, had a higher efficiency relative to the average than Magic did at his time.
And okay, but efficiency, we understand that Steph Curry is the better scorer out of them too. I still think that doesn't really necessarily impact their influence on their team, their impact on their team's offensive game. Magic Johnson could play all 5 positions. Steph Curry can't. And I'm not saying that's a proving point, but okay, Magic Johnson's versatility also keeps him up there on the offensive end. If you ask me who would I rather want offensively, it depends because of the era, but I'm going to take Magic Johnson. I think Magic Johnson, like I said, his ability to play all 5 positions, his scoring inside the paint, they're very, very, when you boil it down, you take Steph Curry's scoring, Magic Johnson's playmaking, it's very comparable on the offensive end.
So, and then also, I forgot who made this point about, Stephen Curry is efficient at distributing the ball to, perimeter shooters and stuff like that compared to Magic Johnson who distributed to big men. That's an invalid argument because who's to say that, if there's plenty of perimeter shooters on Magic Johnson's team that he couldn't adapt to their play style. Like if there is a player that could change his game to better his team, it would be Magic Johnson because he's proven throughout his career that that's what he's capable of doing. So I think that was an invalid argument. Just thought of it.
No, I agree with you on that. Either way, it's a shot created for your teammate. I mean, whether you're passing it out for a 3, whether you're passing it to a 2, it's still a shot created for your teammate. However, like you mentioned, Daniel, like Magic could play more positions. However, Magic constantly demands the ball in his hands. He needs the ball to be effective. He's not as good of a cutter or as good of a mover without the ball in his hands. And that attracts less defensive attention, and his teammates do not get as much open looks as Steph Curry's teammates do. So, I mean, versatility, although it matters somewhat, Steph Curry's offensive effectiveness, due to how portable he is, due to how much he moves without the ball in his hands, is what I'll take on my basketball team.
Right, and it's like that was my point. It wasn't necessarily Magic is just like if you put Magic with ball dominant player, like ball dominant guards or wings, he's not going to be able to fit as well as Curry did.
You don't know that. That's another what if.
That was his game.
You got to stop throwing what ifs in this argument.
Magic Johnson needs the ball in his hands.
He's the ultimate teammate. He's the ultimate team winner. He's the ultimate winner. He's the ultimate teammate. He can adapt his game to any player that's on his team.
He's not going to be able to adapt as well as Steph Curry can.
So
that's my point.
We don't know that.
Assuming
Yes, he can, because his off-ball movement is so much better. He's going to be able to adapt. He's going to be able to come off screen.
What Will is trying to say is that when Magic has sacrificed for guys like Kareem, he has seen a bigger downtake in his game, a bigger downtake in his production than Steph has, because he needs the ball to be effective. He needs the ball to drive. He needs the ball to pass. He needs the ball to be the top-tier playmaker he is. Steph doesn't need the ball to do that. He can let KD operate and just constantly run around in circles, drawing defensive attention that clears up the paint for guys like KD, guys like Clay, guys like Dre. That's what Will is trying to say. It's not that Magic hasn't sacrificed for his teammates. It's that when Magic sacrifices, he gets more negatively affected than a guy like Steph does, who doesn't see much of a drop.
Yeah, Steph Curry can sacrifice, and he can still be the best player on the team. We saw it.
And it's not like a hypothetical. When you added Worthy to the mix, when you added Wilkes to the mix, I mean, Magic did see a decrease in his volume of scoring, a decrease in his efficiency, while Steph didn't really see that with KD. He saw a decrease in volume, obviously, when you add to another great scorer. However, his efficiency and his productivity did not decrease as much as Magic.
But at the end of the day, it doesn't. What does Magic Johnson? I'm completely okay with Magic Johnson having the ball in his hands. I don't need him to play off the ball. If I have Magic Johnson playing with the ball in his hands, we saw how productive their offenses were. We saw it, and like obviously, it's if you have Steph Curry, it gives you more options, because if you add another guy like a James Harden, another ball dominant guy, you can do more. But the Lakers' offenses were really good with him. With the ball in his hands, they succeeded. The playoffs, time and time again, they succeeded. And that's where it's like, you can take it how it's up to you. I'm okay with Magic Johnson having the ball in his hands.
Daniel, hold on.
As am I, but that point doesn't that's not really a valid argument, because both led the best offenses in the league for multiple years. I mean, yeah. I don't really see what that really proves. Like, Magic was a great on-ball playmaker. However, Steph is both a better on-ball and off-ball playmaker. And Magic holding the ball more, it doesn't necessarily take away from his teammates, but when you add more pieces to the equation, it will take away.
Aside from scoring, off-ball, I understand what you're trying to say. But aside from scoring, how is Curry a better on-ball contributor than?
I didn't say he was a better on-ball player. I said Magic's a better on-ball player.
Okay.
Yeah, Magic's better on-ball. Yeah. But Steph Curry's off-ball makes it comparable. I would still personally give the slight edge to Magic, but it makes it closer. And added the scoring, like Steph Curry's just better offensively. Daniel, wait, hold on. Haven't you said that this era is the best? This era, like LeBron's your GOAT, right?
Yeah, LeBron's my GOAT
because he's playing in this era, right? And
that has nothing to do with him playing in this era. It has everything to do with his career.
I thought that was
everything to do with his career.
Oh, okay, all right.
No,
because if that was true, I was going to question why you have Curry not as your greatest point guard, because
and Steph Curry still can. I'm not denying that he can. He still can. I mean, he's only how old? 32.
I just thought I remembered you saying.
He turned 33 a month ago.
I don't necessarily know what this Warriors team needs to do in order to get back to a real finals contender, but if he can shell out another MVP caliber season, if he can make a couple, okay, obviously this season, but if he can make a couple more finals, I mean, he just has to keep what he's doing up for the next 4 to 5 years, and who knows?
Yeah.
Like that's why I think, just to finish this up, the influence on the sport, it's not really a huge argument, because they both impacted the sport in different ways. And that's why I'm really curious to see how Steph Curry progresses, because the ball's in his court, right? As of right now, I'm still saying Magic Johnson's the better player, better career all around, but Steph Curry's only 32, 33.
Yeah, no, I think in a few years it's going to be Curry, and that's like the clear option in my opinion. So, but it is still a very good debate to have today.
Yeah, completely. Sure. But any final words out of Pranav or Max?
Enjoy greatness. What we're witnessing this season out of Steph is one of the best offensive floor raising seasons I've seen.
It's true.
It's and that's something that really doesn't get said enough, right? I mean, like Kobe Bryant, for I don't know how many years of his career, he had playing with some bums on his team, and like it showed. You just have to appreciate, not bums, but you know what I mean. Yeah. It showed you just have to appreciate how talented these guys are. A guy like Steph Curry, like this year, heading into the season, I was like, I feel bad for the man. Like he's got no help. He's got no help, but we're still, as Pranav was saying, we're still seeing how talented he is. He's putting up one of the best offensive seasons we've ever seen. So appreciate greatness. Guys, great debate. Let's switch it over to the NFL right now. I mean, we got the NFL draft in a couple of weeks, big topics to talk about, but let's really focus in on a couple of teams. I want to hear who has to ace the NFL draft. If you're a team, what team is the NFL draft most important to this season?
I'm going to say this, and it's not because I'm a fan of this team, but it's because they didn't make a lot of offseason moves. There's two teams, but one of them is Miami Dolphins. A lot of it is because people have a lot of question marks on Tua's development. And I think a lot of it is unfair. You have these media pundits saying Sam Darnold's going to be the second coming of Christ, and then Tua plays half a season, has better statistics, and had a winning record, which is something that Sam Darnold can never say he's ever had in the NFL. And yet Tua is this guy who's a bust, and Tua is this and that. Listen, for most of the season, he wasn't even working with like his true receiving core. Devontae Parker was out for most games. Preston Williams was out for most of the season. Matt Collins had to come in. He's a practice squad guy. He can't even catch a football. I mean, come on. So my point is, the Dolphins, yes, they added Will Fuller. They didn't really make many other changes, right? And if they did, it's mostly depth moves, especially on the defensive side. Doesn't really help Tua's growth. So what you need to ace this draft. You need to bring in either a Jamar Chase or a Kyle Pitts to help Tua's development. You need to help bring pieces to help officially, the offensive line is young and developing. Bring in that one guy that's going to make the offensive line competent, and that's going to protect Tua for the foreseeable future. Bring in a running back. That's an every down back. That's the one position the Dolphins have been lacking. Yes, Myles Gaskin had a good season, but he didn't do enough, in my opinion, to prove that he's a 3-down back in the league. So you need to bring in a guy like a Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, or even a Javonte Williams, an every down back to help Tua. That's going to help his production. And obviously fill in some holes on the defense. But because this team didn't go out and get a Kenny Golladay or one of these insane players, and yes, Will Fuller's a good player, but we know he has injury concerns. We know he's coming off a PED suspension. So who knows what's coming with Will Fuller. So point is, this draft means so much for not just the Dolphins' future, but also for Tua's development. And quickly, I'll give my second team, and I think Will agree. I think it's Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh Steelers, we saw they had virtually no run game, and I think there's no excuses for that. So they need to either bring in a new running back, because James Conner just left to Arizona, bring in some pieces on the offensive line to help refine and help the overall production of the run game. And also, you have to put Ben Roethlisberger in a position to succeed. We saw how he was early on in the season. He was incredibly efficient, and he won, and he was, he had the best team in the league for the longest time. But what happened was his play decreased when the run game became even more of a non-factor, and he couldn't necessarily rely on his receiving weapons to do the job. So you have to put your veteran quarterback, who's probably in the last year of his career, in a position to succeed, and also put yourself in a position to plan for years to come without Ben Roethlisberger, because Ben Roethlisberger, like I said, is probably not going to be there much longer. I think he's gone after this year. So the Pittsburgh Steelers have a lot to work with, and the way that they peaked and then just dropped off significantly, they have a lot of work to do in this draft. So I would say the Dolphins and the Steelers are my two teams.
I'm going to jump in here real quick. I have two teams, but I'm going to give one. I'm going to go with the Los Angeles Chargers. And I think it's really, really, really key for them to add a lot of talent. And here's why. In order to succeed in the NFL, we've seen it's all about getting a quarterback on a rookie deal. If you have that franchise quarterback on a rookie deal, you have to maximize that time. And that's what they did this offseason, right? They went out, they added 2 offensive tackles. They went out, they added a couple more pieces, but this team is still not playoff ready. They lost Hunter Henry. I think they need to add another weapon at receiver or tight end. They have a major hole at cornerback right now. So it is really, really huge for them to hit not only on this first round draft pick, but the 3rd and 4th rounders, because they have a chance right now to go and win a Super Bowl. I'm not saying this year, I'm not saying next year, but with Justin Herbert over the next 3 to 4 years, this is their main window, and that is why I think it's really crucial for them. You have to get a couple foundational cornerstone pieces for your franchise, and if you can hit on 2 or 3 of these guys, maybe you're looking at a chance to make a Super Bowl over the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, so I mean, I have a couple teams as well. Steelers, I completely agree with what you're saying about Max, but I'll talk about the Eagles and the Patriots. Eagles are a team that, let's face it, they're going to be the worst team in that division. Even though the NFC East is very unpredictable, but I still think that they're the worst team. So they're not going to be good next year. The past few seasons, the Eagles fan base has just been put through the ringer with everything. I mean, you had a Super Bowl, 4 years ago, and since then it's just been completely downhill with everything with Doug Peterson, Carson Wentz. We don't even have to get into that. But to me, they just need breakout young players to give this fan base optimism and just this organization in general an optimism. And you look at the past few years, they've really, frankly, they've reached on players on that maybe they're in positions of need, but it's just like they've reached on players that really haven't worked out the past few years for them. So I say they do have 3 first-round picks next year if the goal to make the playoffs, so that's great. But there's so many positions of need that the Eagles have. I say draft best player available, at least early in the draft, and go from there. Obviously, try and add a weapon if he's there, in like a Jalen Waddle or Devontae Smith if they fall to 12 for a guy like Jalen Hurts, just to give him a chance to succeed, even if it doesn't work out next season. But yeah, so I think the Eagles need to ace this draft because it's just been rough for this entire organization. And then quickly, the Patriots. Yeah, what's up?
You're good.
Okay, yeah, I was just going to say the Patriots as well. And they had a extremely aggressive free agency, and I gave Bill Belichick full credit for that. And it's going to help them now for sure. But I think if Belichick really wants to contend for the future and try and get like another dynasty going, he's going to have to start hitting on some draft picks because frankly, his draft selections haven't been like all too great in the past few years. I mean, it's really been hit and miss. I think it needs to be more consistent. And you have so many emerging, like Miami is an emerging team in that division. They were better last year. The Bills just won the division. They're still a contender. So when you have emerging teams in that division, the Patriots definitely need to capitalize on what they did in free agency by having a really good draft.
I would go with the Baltimore. I would go with the Baltimore Ravens.
Real quick. The Eagles. My whole thing with the Eagles, and I completely agree how they need to ace this. This is all on Howie Roseman. I'm going to take this time to really just not criticize, but criticize Howie Roseman.
It is, yeah.
I feel like Doug Peterson he kind of got shafted, right? Doug Peterson was a Super Bowl winning head coach. Doug Peterson has the resume to where you can say, hey, last year wasn't all on him. Like the whole Carson Wentz, Jalen Hurts thing wasn't all on him. It was because they drafted Jalen Hurts. It was because they had Nick Foles on the roster. They couldn't give their quarterback that reassurance, that confidence that he really needed. And Howie Roseman, to be honest, has not drafted well. He hasn't. So that's why I think not only this year's huge, I think next year's the big year.
Right. Yeah, no. These next 2 years, they've reached on a lot of players. And so I completely agree.
It's crazy. Like Howie Roseman is the reason why. I mean, I talked about this when they traded away Carson Wentz. He's the reason they're in the situation they're in. He's dug his own grave, so it's his job to get himself out. They're in cap space hell right now. That's why they made no moves in free agency because they can't. They can't. They don't have the money to. So that's why I think next year, because after this season, they'll realize, okay, Jalen Hurts is our guy or he isn't. So then you head into next offseason with 3 first-round picks and a decision to make with your quarterback. I think the spotlight is on them next year, and it's all on Doug Peterson or on Howie Roseman.
So I'll go with the Baltimore Ravens, and Lamar is one of my favorite players. I defend him all the time. I think he gets a lot of criticism. However, that doesn't change the fact that he does have flaws. Statistically and visually, he did regress as a passer from his MVP season to this season. There's no denying that. However, to give him slight benefit of the doubt, he didn't have a lot to work with. Hollywood Brown was inconsistent, and that was his lead receiving option. They needed to go out there and sign Dez Bryant, who's beyond washed. This offseason, they signed Sammy Watkins, and from a Chiefs fan, Sammy Watkins is barely ever healthy, and even when he is, he's super inconsistent. Nick Boyle, I mean, that's not a huge piece. In this draft, they need to get a solidified number 1 wide receiver. Whether or not the questions about Lamar are answered or not, they need to get him a guy and see if he has a chance. Like Max said about Tua, you have to give the guy a chance. You have to get him weapons and see what he could do. That's what the Ravens have to do with Lamar Jackson. And I think that guy could be Rashad Bateman. They have to trade up for him, anything possible. I think Waddle, I think Chase, and I think Smith will be off the board by the time the Ravens draft selection comes up. Yeah. They have the 24th pick right now. I would trade up for Rashad Bateman. He has it all. He's a great route runner. He's big. He has great hands. That would be my guy.
And can I toss one more suggestion for a receiver? Don't sleep on Terrace Marshall out of LSU.
Yeah.
I feel like he's the perfect. Listen, if Bateman is out of reach, I think that's the perfect value pick for the Baltimore Ravens there because he's a big, tall receiver. You know, Lamar Jackson will have the confidence to throw the ball down the field, and I just think the impact that Terrace Marshall can bring, just from a size perspective, athleticism. You're going to see it in the statistics. I think Lamar Jackson's going to be more prone to throwing the ball down the field just in general, having a guy like that in addition to Mark Andrews.
Guys, I think you guys are missing the point, though. Like, I mean, Pranav, like, we can talk about Lamar Jackson, and I'm not going to say he's overrated, but I don't think that if their whole goal needs to be revamp that pass rush, right? I think Lamar Jackson has major flaws, and I think the only way I can see them making a Super Bowl is if they have a dominant defense. And that's, in order to do that, you have to get pass rushers. I don't think if you drafted Terrace Marshall in round 1, that's going to make a huge difference because Lamar Jackson has his flaws, and obviously a wide receiver would help. But I think they need to focus on the defensive side of the ball. They really need to win on the line of scrimmage, on the defense side of the ball first off, and then see what you can do. In order to make the Super Bowl, their offense can't be the best unit.
Finding a franchise quarterback, though, is extremely hard, and Lamar is entering a contract year. I think they could find a pass rusher in the later rounds. They need to get a solidified number one receiver.
Yeah,
they have to.
I agree 100%.
Last week we talked about the edge class. We previewed the edge class, and it's so deep. Like, there's going to be guys in that second round that I think they'll be able to snag. So it is tough. I agree. Edge is probably their second most needed position because they did lose. I mean, they lost their top 2 starting edges, frankly. They did bring a couple guys back. So, I mean, their edge isn't as weak. And the Ravens, when that defense is at its best, that pass rush is extremely unpredictable. The pass rush really does set up everything for them defensively. But I agree. You got to give Lamar the best shot to succeed. And to me, trading up for Rashad Bateman is the best scenario. Terrace Marshall, I've said it for really, I would say months. Like, Terrace Marshall, as soon as I watched him, I was like, okay, the Ravens, would be an excellent pick for them.
I think you guys are overvaluing what a receiver will do for them. I think the reason they lost in the postseason was because they didn't have that dominant defense. Because Lamar Jackson, you guys already know my criticisms of him. I don't think he can do it in the playoffs. I don't think he can make the Super Bowl unless if he has a dominant defense and they get off to a lead. That's what has to happen. If they can control the clock, we saw it in their 14-2 season, control the clock and play with a lead. And I think in order to do that, you need a top 5 defense. Their defense wasn't top 5 last year. They need a top 5 defense, and then you go from there. I just don't think trading up, giving away more assets for Rashad Bateman, who is going to be a wide receiver 1 at the next level, I don't think that's as important of a need as focusing on your defensive line.
Depends on the edge rusher they get. Like, I'd rather have Bateman than like a guy like Gregory Rousseau or something.
Yeah, completely. I'm also not a huge fan of him. I just
think the depth is there for pass rushers this year, and I think there's a lot of good value in the second round. And again, I don't know if I agree with the idea of trading up for Bateman because even though Bateman's a great player and I think he'll succeed in the league, I just think Terrace Marshall is the ultimate value pick. Plus, you brought in Sammy Watkins. Plus, you have Hollywood Brown there already, and you already have a competent run game. So just the presence of a Marshall and a Watkins, you're going to automatically see improvement in the passing game. So I think, and then also, and I agree with Daniel, for sure pass rush is a need, and that's why you invest in later rounds. I just think the presence of having one of these potential star receivers on that team is going to elevate their offense to another level. And obviously the defense has to hold their own, and it's already competent. I just think you add the receiver, Lamar is going to play better as a result, be more confident on the field, and probably add a whole new element to his game that we have yet to see. And maybe, once you add more value to the pass rush.
This is the final point I'll say. I don't want to keep beating a dead horse, but the fact that the point you made about adding a new element to his game. There is no new element to his game. A wide receiver 1 would help. Rashad Bateman would help this team, but there is no new element to his game. They are going to win in the regular season because of his rushing ability. They're going to win because of that play action pass, because of that offensive scheme that Greg Roman has built there. A wide receiver 1 isn't going to add a whole new element unless if it's a guy like a Jalen Waddle who's explosive as hell. It's not going to add a whole new element. That's what I think. In order to get to the Super Bowl, this team needs to focus on their defense first. I think that's the bottom line. Do any of you guys have another team you guys think that needs ace the draft?
Oh, go
I
ahead.
have one more. I would say the San Francisco 49ers. I mean,
Don't
you trade
draft
up all the way. You trade up all the way to
Draft Mac
3.
Jones. That's how you.
And you're gonna if you're gonna draft. By the way,
Pause. Did you say draft Mac Jones?
No, I said don't draft
Mac Jones.
That's what I'm saying.
Don't draft.
Listen, the San Francisco 49ers gave up all that draft capital to move up to 3. I know we had this debate last week, so I'm not going to keep touching on is Mac Jones the guy or not? Short answer, no, he's not the guy. If Justin Fields is on the board, you take Justin Fields and you just run. You run with it, right? I think Justin Fields is the guy to get. And honestly, if you get Mac Jones and he doesn't succeed and you gave up all that value, it's not a good look. And I think you're putting yourself in a terrible situation for the long term.
I'm going to propose something interesting here. And obviously, you guys know my stance. I think you take Trey Lance or Justin Fields. But here's a hypothetical. What if this 49ers team, and this is a perfect segue into our next topic, what if this 49ers team traded up for Kyle Pitts, right? And you're running it back because we've seen Jimmy Garoppolo can get them to a Super Bowl, right? And this offense.
There's no way they're taking a non-quarterback.
I know, I understand, but top 3 offensive line in the league. You have weapons. Brandon Ayuk's going to be way better in the second year. Deebo Samuel, you got the run game still there. George Kittle, and you add Kyle Pitts. That offense with Jimmy Garoppolo, we've seen him go to the Super Bowl. We've seen this offense be top 10 without Jimmy G. If they add Kyle Pitts, tell me that's not a great idea. Though.
That would be I just don't see why they would give up that much value for Kyle Pitts.
Traded with Miami to 6.
I agree. I completely agree. But let's say if they draft Kyle Pitts, that team.
Okay, so here's my take on that. Kyle Pitts, I think is a top 5 player in the class or in this entire draft class. Probably a top 3 there's an argument he's the best non-quarterback in the draft class.
Yeah.
And I think he can be one of the best tight ends in football in the not too distant future, probably at his peak or in his prime years. I just when you look at his skill set, there's no way you can't say he's going to be one of the best pass catching tight ends in his prime or when he's at his best, assuming that he's in a system that utilizes.
So who's saying no?
So okay, it's tough though with the Niners because they traded all that stuff.
That would make no sense. The trade would make no sense if they weren't taking a quarterback.
So if they draft
how good is that team this year? How far does that team make it?
That team could have made it to the Super Bowl if they were healthy, even without Kyle Pitts. So why? I don't understand why you give up that much value for Kyle Pitts if you already have the best tight end in football.
That's not my question.
I'm just saying you could have easily taken a quarterback.
Hold on.
Go ahead.
How good is this team this year with Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback and adding Kyle Pitts? How good are they?
Let me propose a counter question. How good is this team this year adding a franchise quarterback who can make deep throws that Jimmy Garoppolo can?
And probably bring athleticism that Jimmy Garoppolo can't bring either.
But my question once again, Max or Pranav, somebody answer. How good is this team with Kyle Pitts?
I don't think much better than they will be without him because they already have an elite offense. They had a top 10 offense without Jimmy Garoppolo last year. So look, I don't know if the ceiling is that much higher with Kyle Pitts this year. It'll be an improvement, but they're already considered a Super Bowl contending team even without Kyle Pitts. So how much of an improvement is it?
I value a franchise quarterback who exponentially potentially can raise the ceiling of your team further than a 2 tight end set.
Absolutely.
It just to me it just doesn't make a whole lot
makes
of
zero sense.
When Kyle Pitts could be there at 12.
That's why this is a crazy hypothetical. But if Kyle Pitts is on that team, that offense is.
It's going to be.
Do you want to make a bet, Daniel? Do you want to make a bet?
It's just not.
Do you want to make a bet on this show? Do you want to make a bet? You name the price. You want to make a bet? They're taking Kyle Pitts at 3. Please, I would be more than happy. Put any amount on it.
Max, I clearly said before I brought this up, they're taking a quarterback.
Then why are we wasting our time with this conversation?
Because
let's be honest, there's no point in having this conversation if they're not going to do it.
That team.
It'd be scary, but it's just not a better value pick considering they traded up all those assets.
It just makes no sense. It wouldn't make any sense.
I'm not going to say if they drafted Kyle Pitts, I wouldn't give him an F because that is just a scary weapon to add to a scary system. But they're not maximizing what they should have been able to do by putting yourself in position to get
Or
it.
not, or you
It'd
said-
be better than Grappler.
Max and Daniel, I know Max is high on Marshall as a value pick, and Daniel has scouted this wide receiver class through and through. Thomas has a hot take in the comments. He said Bateman is wide receiver too, and he's much better than Marshall. What do you guys take away from that?
I agree, much better than Marshall.
I think he's much better than Marshall.
Oh, yeah.
I think for me, it's Marshall he's not a shoe-in to be a wide receiver one. Bateman has all the traits. Bateman has shown that he can be a wide receiver one at the college level. Even last year with Tyler Johnson on his team, Bateman was through and through the far better, far superior wide receiver talent. Wide receiver two, that's a little bit of a stretch. But at the end of the day, if you're giving me a guy, it's like last year when I scouted last year's class, CeeDee Lamb was my guy because I said, hey, that guy has all the tools to be a wide receiver one, not a gadget guy, a wide receiver one. Bateman has the same thing, which is why I'm not going to disagree with him being wide receiver two, because Jalen Waddle, you can say, is a gadget guy. Devontae Smith, at some point, you can say is a gadget guy. Bateman is in that clear top four conversation.
And who knows, the fourth and third picked wide receivers from last year ended up being the best.
Yeah, I think Bateman's in the same tier as a guy like Waddle and Smith. And I mean, mainstream wise, people really don't give Bateman the credit that he deserves. Like, I don't think anyone really. There's not that many people who would consider Bateman on that level, but when you really dive into the film and just consider the skill sets, yeah, I would say he's on that tier. So if you have him at 2, that's cool. I would probably put him at like a 4, but it's not that far. He's not that far off.
Yeah.
And I think he's definitely, but he's better than Marshall. The only point was that they'd have to. Marshall is probably more realistic for them to be there for the Ravens.
Exactly.
Bateman, obviously.
But at the same time, we can see a run on offensive tackles early in the draft. I wouldn't be shocked. But let's finish it off with one final topic. We've seen a little bit of a rumor. Tyson Fury versus Francis Ngannou, right? I mean, that would be absolutely wild to see. Max, our UFC guy, talk to me. What do you think about those rumors? If a fight were to ever happen in the future, how would that go? Just talk to me about that.
So I think it's more true or more possible to happen than people may be speculating. Obviously, I think, Ngannou still has, I want to say, 1 or 2 fights left on his contract. And I'm sure he'll re-sign in the near future, because he's the champ right now, right? Everyone wants him. The issue with Ngannou in the past, before he won the heavyweight championship, was that no one wanted to fight him because they know the sheer power and the sheer intimidation that comes with fighting, a guy like Francis Ngannou. And the thing is, I've seen him on various, podcasts and interviews where he's talked about, before he got into MMA, his passion was boxing. He wanted to be a boxer. But then what happened was MMA, throughout his life, he had trained boxing, and then what brought him over to the States was MMA. So now he's stuck with MMA. But boxing has always been a genuine passion of his. And we even see it in the style in which he fights. He's very much a stand-up puncher, right? He's not really much of a wrestler. He's a genuine boxer. So I think he could last with Tyson Fury. Now, would I pick him to beat Tyson Fury? It's tough to say because this guy, has never fought a professional boxing fight, albeit he's fighting probably the best boxer in the world, not named like Floyd Mayweather or Canelo Alvarez. But I think, he could certainly compete. If one clean shot from Ngannou on anybody, I don't care if you're, it doesn't matter what fighter you are, who you are. You take a clean shot from Ngannou, he can put anybody on the ground. So what I would take probably Tyson Fury. But listen, maybe in between contract negotiations, he's going to be a free agent, like I said, in about 2 fights. I could see maybe an exhibition fight between him and Tyson Fury. Definitely.
All I'm gonna say, and listen, Max, my passion for the sport has gone through the roof. And anytime I get the chance,
awesome.
I advocate for the sport, right? Anybody who doesn't watch UFC or boxing, give it a shot. If you like combat sports, give it a shot. Watch, even if it's like these fight nights on every Saturday, watch them, right? Like, and it's so fun to hear the storylines. But the storyline behind this would be ridiculously awesome because it's the 2 best in either sport. It's like Conor versus Floyd Mayweather. And Francis, he could put up a fight. Like you said, it's any given punch, he can knock out his opponent. So I think if it were to happen, it would be a money-making machine. It would be awesome. But it's until it happens.
Ngannou would be set for life after that fight.
Oh my God.
He could retire tomorrow if he fought that fight.
The man's set for life already, but Will.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, if Ngannou fights like he did, I was super impressed with his last fight. If he can match that and this, and obviously he's fighting a different guy, more seasoned than Fury, and just more experienced overall with his big match experience. But if Ngannou can fight how he did last time, I think he has a really good shot because he proved that he's more than just like a one punch. Like that, he doesn't need just. I mean, the one punch is huge because he can knock out a guy with one punch for sure. But it's like he has a little bit more than that, and he proved that last time. And so I think if he can bring that attitude in this one, he'll definitely have a shot to win.
Oh yeah, Pranav, any final words?
No, not really.
All right, guys, that pretty much does it. We covered a lot, guys. We talked about Jamal Murray's impact. We debated for 25, 30 minutes about Magic versus Steph. Our biggest takeaway, appreciate greatness, right? Just appreciate these guys. Steph Curry, appreciate him when he's winning. Don't hate on the man. It's the same thing, like, I'm going to bring it up. Kevin Durant, like, he went to the Warriors, and we're not going to get into this. Appreciate Kevin Durant.
I'm a Thunder fan. I can't. Sorry.
Even if you're a Thunder fan, even if you got he's a snake, appreciate greatness.
Kevin Durant didn't go to the Wizards. I don't appreciate him, man.
Like, regardless, let's appreciate it. But guys, NFL draft we covered. But if you guys are still with us, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got a lot of great content on here. Breakdowns every single day. Jake Circus, he's our other co-host. He's not on today, but he's doing a terrific job on his 32 teams in 32 days series. Terrific stuff here going on at the Right Way Sports Network. We got a website. We got a mobile app. All that good stuff at the Right Way Sports Network. So, as always, guys, another Tuesday, another dollar.
$1.
The show goes on. Have a good night, everybody.